Many people don't know that when we first took over Proof in 2017, it wasn't fully a sourdough bakery. It's actually Amanda and I that drove it to practically be 100% sourdough. So before that, we learned a few things that a lot of our customers still miss from time to time. One of them is buttermilk biscuits. I'm going to teach you how to make the most amazing layered buttermilk biscuits. Keep in mind, it's a croissant maker that's teaching you how to do this, so they're going to be a little extra with all the layers of butter and dough. We're going to start with a little bit of salt in the bowl. This is a hand mix recipe. I'm going to make about 12 biscuits. Hopefully, with any luck, I'll be eating them in under an hour here. So 24 grams of salt. I'm going to get the sugar in as well. So dry ingredients are going in first this time, which is a little different than we normally do. Actually, everything about making biscuits is a little different than we normally do. Start with a base flour. I'm using Central Milling's Artisan Baker's Craft, which at the retail level they just simply call organic bread flour. It's kind of right in the middle, protein-wise, 11% or so. I think it's 11.5. It can be used as a base bread flour, but it can also veer towards an all-purpose flour. White Sonora is a lower protein flour, and combined will bring us in the right territory for biscuits. We are not trying to develop gluten for biscuits, folks, and that's why everything about mixing this is a little bit different than what you might be used to if you've been watching me mix on YouTube for a little while. Normally, when we're mixing bread doughs, we're trying to develop the gluten, but in biscuits, we're doing more of the type of technique that you would do if you were mixing a pie crust or something where gluten actually is hurting you, not helping you. So now I'm going to put the same 600 grams, so 50-50. This one is now the White Sonora flour. It's quite light for a whole grain flour. We mill this whole wheat on our stone flour mill from New American Stone Mills. And the White Sonora grain has been grown here locally in Arizona for hundreds of years, originally introduced into this area by the Spaniards. And so the native population continued the tradition of growing White Sonora. It's not particularly great as a bread flour per se, but more along the lines of all-purpose. It's a great flavor add. It has great nutritional profiles. So really, a lot of the flours we choose at Proof Flour Mill are to enhance your recipe, not be kind of the base of it. So you don't want to use the White Sonora flour like just any old run-of-the-mill flour. In this case, I'm blending it 50-50. Now I'm just going to bring these few ingredients together for ease. And I might opt for a slightly larger mixing bowl. I haven't put in any of my wet ingredients and I'm pretty much full. All right, this is a little better. Okay, now I can definitely get the sugar and salt mixed in evenly. And here is where biscuits start to get a little challenging. This is actually, I would argue, the only challenging part about biscuits to get right is how you bring in the butter into the formula. Intentionally, I kept my butter in the fridge. I'm going to grab it. It's a full pound that's coming in. And in order for me to incorporate it, I need to actually first make it into what will amount to be small discs or cubes. You should think like a coin is the ideal final result for this butter while still being cold. So to do that, I'm cutting it first in strips one way and then another, and I will finish it off with another tool that will give me the final cubes. And then I will manipulate this butter and the flour some more with my hands. Okay, so I've got all these small cubes now, and I can go ahead and put them directly into the flour. I'll get some of the rest out in a moment. I need to get all this butter in. I'll show you the next steps. Okay, I have my little French fries of butter cut out now, so I can use this tool to finish out. Okay, so I almost have these all down to cubes. It's time to get it in with the flour where I'll finish my work. This is probably one of the harder parts to get right. So once we get past this, things will get slightly more predictable. Pay close attention to this part. It's nothing too difficult. Basically get the butter incorporated with the flour and then start to separate out and smash your cubes into discs. So it will take you a little bit of time to get through this. It's a little bit cathartic. Helps for the flour to be coating the butter. So we're just creating these flat discs. Basically just going to pick through it until I can't really feel any more cubes and rather feel mostly flat discs. It's kind of interesting because by the end of this, it actually has a very similar function to what we get when we make croissant dough. Make like 81 layers of dough, butter, except that work is way more precise. This is kind of cheater lamination, but when you're making a pie dough or you're making, in this case, the biscuit dough, you're going for those layers, and it leads to the right texture in the final product. You're going to have some of the flakiest biscuits you've tried if you follow this correctly. Don't be afraid to hang out here for a little while. Might be worth putting in a podcast or listening to some music as you do this. It'll be a lot easier to take the next step if you don't end up with very large chunks, but you have more of the discs. Your tool can kind of help. It's actually designed to do this part. Just kind of break up that butter into smaller pieces. Some people call this cutting in the butter. Nearly happy with it. I have one more dry ingredient, and it's the baking powder. Let's get 72 grams in. It'll give me a chance to get one last feel of how the butter incorporated with the flour, clear up any non-discs that evenly spread. Correcting a couple more butter pieces that I noticed. And now I'm going to go ahead and add 800 grams of cold buttermilk that came directly from the fridge. This is my last ingredient. I will egg wash these. You don't have to. You could wash them with just more buttermilk, just to get a little bit of a browning effect on the top of them. But I like the texture that the egg leaves, so that's the only other ingredient is a couple whole eggs. So now I'm going to basically bring my hands underneath the flour and just kind of fold it over gently. Not trying to develop any gluten, not trying to overmix this. I'm mixing it to the point that there is no longer as many visible signs of just flour, and I'm mostly seeing something that feels shaggy, to be sure, but is no longer flour and liquid, and rather is kind of something that's unified. It's hard to gauge exactly the level. You want to get rid of all the powder in the bowl, but not necessarily get it to the point that any gluten can form. So keep in mind, if you knead this dough, you will form gluten. That's not what we're after. That's one of the reasons why I'm also mixing in the way that I am. So that's about it. That's all that I need to do at this stage. You can see that it's just a million pieces of the resulting dough. And I'm going to basically dump it all on the table now. So step one is to bring this into one cohesive mass. The shagginess is okay. Keep in mind we're wanting to create these flaky layers, and so the butter's never going to fully be incorporated into this dough. It's going to stay more separated, and the final dough will have this sort of marbled effect. My first step here, I need to find a straight edge that I can use for myself, because what I want to do is basically fold it in half at this stage once I've used my hands to bring it into a loose rectangle. So now I'll use a straight edge to fold it over itself. Something like this will do. So I'll pick up the bottom and just fold it over. The parts that didn't make it, I'll just sort of correct course with them. I find it a lot easier to work with the mass in a horizontal, so that's how I'll orient it. Now I'll use my rolling pin, and I can dust the top with a little bit of flour just to provide a little less stickiness. So my idea here will be to bring this mass together with compression and then roll it out sideways so that I can perform a trifold. And the reason I'm going to do that is to multiply the layers that I'm creating with those butter chunks that are butter discs that are being cut into this dough. So one of the ways that I can make my life a little easier as I go is use my straight edge and square off the ends. There's no strict length that it has to be, but I need to be able to do that trifold successfully. So currently I'm probably at about 18 inches in width and about 12 inches in overall height. I'm going to grab about a third and fold it over. And then another third and fold that over to make that letter fold. Same thing, I'll switch the orientation for myself to make it easier. And I need to do this one more time. So first I'm starting with compressions, kind of rocking my rolling pin. If you notice a lot of material sticking to your rolling pin, that's where you can reach for some of your all-purpose flour and just sprinkle it on top. It helps. Don't overdo it. So after compressions, I'll roll out. Same thing goes to the bottom. If you find that as you're rolling it, it's not moving with you, you might need to just dust the surface with some flour. So once again, rolled it out quite a bit. Just fold this layer on top, square off the edges. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention, these are going to be square English muffins. Why waste the edges? Why bring in unnecessary equipment to round them? They turn out really nice square. I even like the corner pieces. So I did another letter fold there. And now I'm basically going to be ready to form my final biscuits. So once again, just a dusting of flour on top. And I have 12 3x3 biscuits, so they're 3 inches wide, 3 inches tall. So if I want 12, that means I'll have 4 going widthwise and 3 going through the height. So my height for this entire square needs to be at least 9 inches. My width needs to be 12 inches, which I think I'm pretty much there on the width already. It is good to overshoot your final measurement sum so that you can get really nice squares, and we can reuse the extras in a moment. I'll show you how to do that as well. You will need a tape measure to get accurate results for this part. Wow, I'm right on the money with 12. and 9. So I want to roll this out just a tad further on either end so that I have something to cut. And I'm just scoring now at about the lines that I need to get my final biscuits. Great. They should cut very easily. I'll cut all the corners. All these extra pieces need to be placed together. We should be able to get a few more biscuits out of them. And I'll show you how to refold them to deal with that, but let's cut out our original 12. These are ready to just egg wash the very tops. I'm going to put them on a sheet pan lined with a silpat and into a 375-degree oven until they reach an internal temperature of 190 degrees. It's probably going to be a little bit under 15 minutes for the bake. You can bake it on a convection setting if your oven does that. Let me go ahead and get my sheet pan. The beauty of these biscuits is in all of these layers. It's just amazing, the layers, when you look at them. They look like croissant dough. Don't underestimate these. They will expand quite a bit in the oven, so leave some space. A half sheet pan should be able to accommodate your 12. I wouldn't put any more than 12 on this sized vessel. Let's go ahead and egg wash them and get them in the oven. And while they're baking, I'll show you how you can tease out a few more scrap biscuits from this batch. So simple egg wash just for the very top. You'll notice a difference in how these bake up as a result of this. Currently closest to our Shea Bakery, and I have a manager there that's from the South. He made biscuits once and only ever saw a photo of mine. I'm gonna have to drop these by because I think they can rival anything he's had from the South, even though biscuits are very popular there. What makes these particularly special is all the layering with the butter, but also the flour doesn't hurt. I mean, that white Sonora flour that I'm using has a lot of natural flavor, and so the final product here is going to be really, really flavorful because of the flour choices that I made. All right, these are ready to bake now. I'm gonna throw them in the oven, which is already preheated. Okay, here's my scrap dough. So basically, I just need to get it back to a workable shape. So same kind of thing that I've been doing up until now. I'll roll it out, fold it over itself. I can do a letter fold if I want. And from here, back to a cohesive piece. And so I think I'll just want to roll out what will amount to 2 biscuits. So see if I can get the width that I need. Definitely getting a little bit of material now stuck on my rolling pin. So the flour is helpful. Okay. Those are still going to be 2 very nice additional biscuits. Nice layering. So I'll set those aside for now. And I was able to use a lot more of my overall prepared biscuit dough. So I should probably clean up while this bake continues. and it'll be exciting to look at these in just a few minutes. I can smell those buttermilk biscuits in the oven. I took a peek through the glass and the tops are starting to have the right color. Really want to make sure that the internal temperature is about 190 or above. If you reach that temperature, you know that it will likely finish out, still kind of build internal temperature a few minutes after you take it out of the oven. So let's go ahead and check on our biscuits and see where they landed. I'm going to stick a probe in them. We are good to go, you guys. A nice golden brown top. You can see all the layers. Start taking these off and transferring them. Let's take a look at the bottom. Really nice golden brown color on the bottom. Now, I don't know what's going through your mind looking at these, but a nice warm biscuit with honey always crosses mine. More on kind of the advanced end, maybe like a crispy chicken sandwich on a biscuit sounds delicious with a pickled element. These are just amazing, and if you've never made them before, you can see start to finish doesn't take very long. Highly, highly recommend buttermilk biscuits. All right, there you have it. I'm gonna try one of these once they cool down just a little bit. I'm pretty pleased with how they turned out. All right, it's the moment of truth. Let's dig into these buttermilk biscuits. Wow, look at all those flaky layers. You get a little bit of a crunch on the outside. They're soft on the inside, and the texture of those layers is super satisfying. You just want to eat the whole thing right away. Such an easy treat to make at home. Start to finish in under an hour. No crazy ingredients needed. You do need to run out and probably get some buttermilk. You might already have everything else. So give these a try for sure. Try them with the white Sonora. That flavor of the grain comes through and makes it a little bit more than just your average biscuit. Not that all these layers would have made it average to begin with, but definitely the flour matters because different grains have different flavor, and especially when you mill on stone, all that flavor comes through really strongly. So you're definitely eating a Sonoran biscuit when you make this recipe. Did you know that you can now bake at home with the same flours that we use at the bakery at Proof? Proof Flour Mill is our new project. We're using an old school stone mill to mill 5 amazing varieties of grains that you can ship right to your doorstep in order to make beautiful buttermilk biscuits like this or loaves like that. And best yet, you can follow along on our channel where we'll show you how. Head to proofmill.com and browse our selection today.